Welcome back with another edition of the 2021 NFL Draft Recaps with our draft insider, Pauline, doing a division that's near and dear to my heart. As you guys can see in the background, I have two Cowboys jerseys hanging here. So we're just going to get the news out of the way quick. We're going to get this wound healed. Tony, how did you feel about the Cowboys draft?
Well, let me say first thing is I don't have any Cowboy jerseys or jerseys behind me. I have a poster of Robert Plant of Led Zeppelin. So
that's a lot cooler, honestly.
Yeah, I beat you there. So as far as the Cowboys are concerned, if I was going to use one word to describe their draft, it would be risk. I think it's a very risky draft. I think they've got players overall that have a high upside. But I think players at the top, especially, are guys that are not short things. Not that there's ever a short thing in the draft, but considering they were picking the top half of every round. I mean, they go with Micah Parsons, which was an interesting selection when you look at their depth chart. I don't know that he's going to be the pass rusher they want him to be or the pass rusher the teams expected him to be. Is he going to play middle linebacker? I know this. They're very excited about having Leighton Vander Esch and Micah Parsons roam that second level of the defense. Both guys are incredibly athletic. Parsons is explosive. He's fast in a straight line as well as laterally. He can get from point A to point B in a nick of time. He can drop off the line and play in coverage. He's forceful up the field. He does a lot of things. He's got to do them consistently. Let's forget about the reported or the alleged off the field issues. My concerns with Parsons, and I said this all along, is the instincts run hot and cold. Sometimes he's looking for the ball. Sometimes he's not quickly reacting. But he was able to make up for it in the Big Ten because of his superior athleticism, his ability to get to point A to point B in a nick of time, and no one was able to block him. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to do that on Sunday. So there's a lot of upside there. The unpolished instincts are kind of a minor red flag for me. Same thing with Kelvin Joseph. I mean, obviously, they lost Byron Jones in free agency 2 years ago. They need a cornerback. Joseph is a big physical corner who really came on this year at Kentucky after transferring from LSU. There were questions about his speed specifically. A lot of people, that play where Kyle Pitts of Florida runs away from him from a touchdown sticks in their minds. He did run in the 4.3s during his pro day. He was put in the playmaking position in the defensive backfield at Kentucky this year, and he responded with a lot of big plays. He's instinctive. He does a good job, reading the action and making his move to the ball. He makes plays with solid ball skills as well as just physically beating down opponents. But again, he needs to polish his game. He's got a good amount of upside. I want to see how he does making plays with his back to the ball because that's something he wasn't asked to do all that much at Kentucky. Odighizuwa, I know that the Cowboys liked Milton Williams, but they lost out on him. They take Odighizuwa, who was your prototypical three-technique tackle. I think he's a good addition to the defensive line. He's quick. He's explosive. Multiple offensive linemen I spoke to during Senior Bowl practice said he was the toughest guy to stop. Fires off the snap with an explosive first step. He goes on every single play. He's a one-gap penetrator who's a good fit for the system. I also like Chauncey Golston, although Golston as well as Nashawn Wright, their other third-round pick, I thought they were taken a little bit earlier than I had him on my board. Golston is an outstanding 4-3 defensive end. He can rush the passer. Like Odighizuwa, he's a guy who plays with great intensity. But like Odighizuwa, he comes up a little bit shy when you're talking about the physical skills. Odighizuwa is short. He doesn't have much growth potential. Golston's a little bit slim. He's not a strong guy at the point of attack. Nashawn Wright was interesting. I knew he was moving up draft boards. Some people told me he could go in the third round. He's a guy who had a solid junior year last season at Oregon State. He's tall, very tall. He's almost 6'4". He's thin. He flashes ball skills. But he's a guy who's got to get a little bit stronger because he's got a lanky body and he loses out in battles. He's got a decent amount of upside. Jabril Cox was an outstanding selection in round 4. This was probably my favorite selection for the Cowboys. I thought this was a steal. I thought Jabril Cox should have gone day 2. He is a good fit for the system. Another guy to add in there with Leighton Vander Esch and Micah Parsons as far as the athleticism, the ability to roam that second level, pursue the run, drop off the line, and play in space and coverage, which Cox does exceptionally well. I thought that was a great steal. Josh Ball is an interesting case. I mean, Josh Ball on film and playing ability legitimately was a day 2 selection. He was a guy who transferred out from Florida State because he had off-the-field issues, which scared a lot of people, to Marshall. was a rotational tackle for Marshall in 2019, took hold of the starting left tackle job in 2020 and was outstanding, just played better and better and better. He's tall, he plays with outstanding fundamentals, he's got the footwork to slide off the edge, he's got the strength to be a dominant run blocker, he plays smart, nasty football. The off-the-field issues is it something where it was a one-off incident, it was a he said, she said, it wasn't a consistent problem for Josh Ball, but it still scared a lot of teams away. Again, like 𝗙𝗢𝗥𝗘, Ball in round 4 could be a real steal for the Cowboys moving forward. He's a guy who could develop into a starting tackle. 𝗬𝗢𝗥𝗢𝗑 of Stanford, I mean, he's got upside, he's got good size, he's got good speed. He's got to basically capitalize on what was a good 2020 campaign. He's either going to be a real good receiver in the NFL or he's going to be a J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, someone who has got great upside potential, looks good in the preseason, but can't hold on to a ball during the regular season. Quinton Bohanna is more of your nose tackle type. Israel Makuma of South Carolina, a bigger physical cornerback who I actually think will be better at safety than he will be at corner because he doesn't have the great speed. Matt Faranook of Nebraska in the last round, played tackle, projects to guard, was solid in Nebraska, had a sensational pro day, which is what moved him into the late rounds of the draft, or the final round of the draft, I should say. If he doesn't make the active roster, I think Faranook is a guy that will be on the practice squad this fall.
And speaking of the practice squad, are there any UDFAs that the Cowboys picked up that you liked?
You know, I was told that they were going to look at tight ends during the draft, and obviously this was a poor tight end draft, but they may have come away with a great steal with UDFA in Nick Eubanks of Michigan. I mean, here is a guy that if you go back and you watch the 2019 film, he legitimately looked like a third, fourth round pick. He looks almost like a big power forward on the football field, catches the ball extremely well, does a good job blocking, moves well about the field. The difference between his 2019 season and 2020 season was night and day, as it was for a lot of Michigan players. We talked about Jalen Mayfield in a different breakdown, and Eubanks just seemed like he wanted to be elsewhere, but he's got the ability to play at the next level. I think he's someone who could make an active roster, and if he capitalizes on the ability he's shown in the past and really plays up to his level of ability, he's going to be a surprise pick. There was one other guy, Tyler Coyle of Purdue, who was listed as a linebacker. He's more of a strong safety type. Tyler Coyle was played at UConn in 2019. Entering the season, he was graded as a fourth-round pick by scouts, was used as sort of in a rotational, situational sort of role at Purdue last year, then went and had an Olympian type of pro day workout. I mean, it was like we ran in the 4.3s. It was a 38-inch vertical jump. It was outstanding. I think he's a guy who can be a good, strong safety in the league. At the very least, I think Coyle is a practice squad prospect.
Very nice. Now, moving on to the New York Football Giants, who, I mean, Dave Gettleman never trades, and he traded down in the draft. How did you feel about this Giants draft class?
He traded down a couple of times.
I know, unbelievable.
I think the Giants, I think they did a good job overall, but there is a bit of risk here. First, they trade from 11 to 20 and let the Chicago Bears move up to get Justin Fields. They're sitting there at 20. All signs point to 𝗙𝗢𝗥𝗘 because they need an edge rusher. He's a guy that will fill a need. He's a terrific player. 𝗙𝗢𝗥𝗘 at 20 is great value. And then they take Kadarius Toney, the receiver from Florida, a lot earlier than people think. I got my concerns about the Kadarius Toney pick. I like him as a player, but he's more of a gadget player. And two things. Number one, we've seen in the past Jason Garrett, when he was the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, doesn't really know how to, or I don't want to say doesn't know how to, really didn't use that type of player to the maximum. He had Tavon Austin with Dallas. He really didn't do anything with him. So I'm concerned from that point of view. The other thing I'm concerned about is you got to remember, Kadarius Toney, while he was making all these great plays or showing all his playmaking ability on the college level, the opponent's top defenders were not focused on Kadarius Toney. They were focused on Kyle Pitts. Week after week, the Gator opponents were putting their top defensive backs, whether it be Alabama with Patrick Surtain, whether it be South Carolina with J.C. Horn, whether it be Georgia with Stokes and Campbell. They were placing those guys. They were putting them man-to-man against Kyle Pitts, which opened some things up for Kadarius Toney. I think as far as I'm concerned, we'll see how Kadarius Toney does compared to 𝗠𝗢𝗡𝗜𝗍 moving forward. They may have answered the question in round 2 with Azeez Ojulari. Azeez Ojulari is one of my favorite players in this year's draft. I had him graded as a top 15 choice. He's a guy who was good in 2019, outstanding in 2020. He's got great upside, but he does have a degenerative knee condition. Now, it's something that hasn't bothered him in years. It's something that he didn't miss games at Georgia because of, but it's something when teams look at these sort of things when it comes to combine medicals, they're looking at, will a guy last to his second contract? Will he be a second contract player? If the answer is no, or the answer is maybe, they're downgraded anywhere from a round to 2 rounds, which is what happened with Ojulari. The bottom line is this: Ojulari is a perfect fit for the Giants defense, and he's an outstanding pass rusher, and he's got great upside. So if that quote-unquote degenerative knee issue never rears its ugly head, this was a home run for Dave Gettleman. I mean, this is something that Giant fans will remember fondly for years. I thought Aaron Robinson in round 3 was an outstanding selection. He's big, he's physical, he's better making plays facing the action, but he's going to be your nickel back, I think, in zone or occasionally lined up over the slot receiver. I thought Ellerson Smith in round 4 was another really good pick, a guy who came into the season graded as a 3rd-round pick by scouts, a little bit smallish in 2019, didn't play in 2020 because Northern Iowa postponed their season to the spring. Had 3 great days of practice at the Senior Bowl at 277 pounds. I'm surprised he fell into the 4th round. But again, I think with Ojulari and Ellerson Smith, the Giants will find their edge rusher that they desperately need. The Giants made a couple more trades for picks for next year, which I think was a good move. Come away in round 6 with Rodarius Williams of Oklahoma State, another real good player, someone who's shown flashes throughout his Oklahoma State career. He didn't elevate his game the way I thought or hoped in 2020. He ran better than expected during his pro day workout. I think you're looking at a potential dime back here if he makes the active roster, which I think is a real possibility.
And then the Giants, 3 UDFAs. Are there any that really stood out to you?
No. I mean, maybe I like Raymond Johnson of Georgia Southern. I mean, he was a tough, hard player and a guy who got the most from his ability. But I actually like Raymond Johnson more as a defensive end in a 4-man front. I don't know that he's going to be a good fit for the Giants sort of 3-4 system. But, on those occasions where they line up 4-man fronts and they have 4 guys coming out of a 3-point stance, I think Johnson could flourish if he's given the opportunity this summer in camp.
And then, moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles, they must have really been afraid of the New York Giants taking Devontae Smith with that 11th pick, because they jumped up and traded with the Dallas Cowboys to take Smith at 10. How did you feel about their draft overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like the Cowboys, even more so to the Cowboys, especially with their 1st and 2nd day picks, there's a lot of risk with these selections. Devonta Smith, people are likening him to Deshaun Jackson, who had so much success with Philadelphia, although Deshaun Jackson was a 2nd-round pick and he's more of a vertical threat. I mean, Devonta Smith, it'll be interesting to see the way they use him. I love him as a receiver. He's the complete player at the position. He's very polished. He runs great routes. He knows how to separate from opponents, shows great focus as well as concentration, consistent hand catcher. But the fact is, he's 166 pounds. And at 166 pounds at his age, people think he's not going to get much heavier than 171, 172 pounds, which means you got to keep him off of press coverage. And I know whenever I say that, people say, well, he was the best receiver on college level in press coverage. Press coverage in the SEC, as good of a conference as it is not the same thing as press coverage in the NFL. So let's get that straight. So you're going to have to find ways to free up Devonta Smith. If they do, I think it was worth the trade, but there's a bit of risk there. Landon Dickerson in round 2, I mean, it's a major roll of the dice. As I said on the Draft Insiders podcast with Trey Wingo, the information I was getting was Dickerson got a 3- grade on his combine medicals. A 3- grade is equal to a C-. Most teams wouldn't take a guy within the first 5 rounds who got a C- grade on his medicals. I mean, it's not just the knee injury that he suffered in the SEC title game. It's the knee injury and the 2 ankle injuries, the season-ending knee injury and the 2 season-ending ankle injuries that he suffered at Florida State before he transferred to Alabama. On the field, Dickerson is absolutely a 2nd-round pick. He's tough. He's a leader. He does the little things well. He showed significant progress in his game, but those injuries are just a red flag. It's not only just a question of can he get through a season healthy, it's a question of when will those past injuries start to rear their ugly head and maybe bring on the onset of early arthritis or immobility or things like that. Roll of the dice with Dickerson. Great player, but a medical nightmare. Milton Williams was also a bit of a roll of the dice. We had been reporting on Milton Williams on the Draft Insiders podcast back in November when I said that, when he entered the draft, he was going to test through the roof, which is exactly what he did. Yep. 38-inch vertical jump. I think he ran in the 4.5s, on and on and on. We reported. You can go back and look at it. But the thing is, he just doesn't have the production. I mean, right now, he's more athlete than he is football player. And I'm told that was, everyone saw that clip in the war room between Harry Roseman and Tom Donahue. I'm told that Donahue was not too happy that they took Milton Williams. That's why he was upset. Again, Milton Williams, if they're able to develop him, they hit a home run. Otherwise, he's just a guy, an Olympian-type athlete who, really needs to become a football player. I think they did a good job at the day 3. Zach McPherson, he's a smaller guy, but he's a nickel dime back that you can line over the slot receiver. Kenneth Gainwell slid into round 5, which I think surprised a lot of people, including myself, but he's the type of running back that the Eagles like, a fast guy that can turn the corner and then run to daylight. Marlon Piloto of USC fell because of bad medicals, but he's an explosive 3-technique, first step type of lineman. Teron Jackson of Coastal Carolina, I think, is a good fit for the Eagle system. As is Patrick Johnson, and Jacoby Stevens is more of your traditional strong safety, maybe even an outside linebacker for the Eagles.
Yeah, and they took a couple big name UDFAs as well in quarterbacks Jamie Newman, Trevon Grimes. Jamon Osmond was another name that really stood out to me as well. How do you think that they did as a UDFA crew?
Yeah, even 𝗬𝗢𝗣𝗅𝗡 Owasika of Buffalo, who I think is probably one of the real finds in the UDFA class. The left tackle at Buffalo, who I think projects to guard. People were surprised when Jaret Patterson, the Buffalo running back, was not drafted. The record-setting running back. Well, he was a record-setting running back because Owasika was opening up holes the size of highways for Jaret Patterson to run through. So I thought that was an outstanding signing. Another outstanding signing by the Eagles. Osborne was a guy, he ran in the 4.7s during Pro Day, which dropped him off the face of the earth. Jamie Newman didn't play last year, which, that was one of the really bad opt-out decisions. Jack Stoll of Nebraska, the tight end, he's an athletic guy. He needs to learn to basically transfer that athleticism into football ability. Harry Kreider is a Eagles type of lineman. He's a guy who can play center or guard. He's not the most athletic guy in the world, but he understands the position. He's a tough punch in the face type of offensive lineman who I wouldn't be surprised to see make the roster as an 8th or 9th blocker. And
you brought up the name Jaret Patterson, and that's interesting because we're going to the Washington football team, who ended up taking him as an undrafted free agent. But they also took an uber athletic linebacker with their first pick, got Samuel Cosmi in round 2, and then got somebody who I think might be a compliment to Terry McLaurin and Dyami Brown in round 3. How did you feel about their draft overall?
I thought they did an outstanding job. All joking aside, I thought they did a great job. Everyone was talking about them trading up to get a quarterback. I think they surveyed the landscape. They saw what it was going to cost them, and they just sat there and they took good football player after good football player after good football player that fits a need. They needed an inside type of linebacker, middle type linebacker. Everyone thought it was going to be Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. They took Jamin Davis, who comes off a sensational 2020 season, which he topped off with an incredible pro day workout. He's got to complete his game. He's got to improve his ball skills. But if you're looking for a fierce guy that can stack the run up the field or run sideline to sideline in pursuit and run down or chase down ball handlers, that's your guy. He's got a great amount of upside. His game is on the upswing. Samuel Cosmi is also an offensive lineman that's got a great amount of upside. They need a left tackle. He's big. He's athletic. He's a terrific pass protector. I think if Samuel Cosmi had really shown consistent development since his freshman season, he would be a first-round pick. But the reason he was a late second-round pick was he was very up and down. He played uninspired football at times. He was a guy that oftentimes when you watch the film, you expected more than you actually got. but still, he's got the upside. It's a matter of Ron Rivera getting inside his head and getting him to play to his ability. And Ron Rivera does a good job with that. Benjamin St-Juste, the cornerback from Minnesota, I thought was a real good selection. I had him as a third, fourth round pick. He's a big shutdown guy who actually played better in 2019 than he did in 2020. Yeah. I don't think Minnesota really used him correctly in 2020, used him more as a nickelback, but he's got size, he's got ball skills, and he's got a lot of upside. I agree with you about 𝗬𝗢𝗓𝗓 Brown. I mean, 𝗬𝗢𝗓𝗓 Brown went exactly where I thought he would be, where he would go in the third round. He has a lot of speed. He's not 40 fast, but he's football fast. He's a terrific vertical receiver. He gets down the sidelines, he catches the ball. He's shown consistent improvement in his game. He's been a good player for 2 years for North Carolina. I thought this was an excellent selection by Washington. John Bates went a little bit earlier than I thought he would go, but John Bates is really a complete tight end. He's not a real athletic guy. He's not the type of player that Washington is used to having in the past at that position, but he's a guy who can catch the ball. Granted, he's not going to be more than 5 or 10 yards off the line of scrimmage, and he's a guy who does a sensational job as a blocker. 3rd and 2, you can put him on the field and ask him to block, or you can put him out, send him out in a short route and have him catch the ball. He's that type of tight end. Derek Foster is one of my favorite players in the draft. I'm glad to see he went in the 5th round. This is a guy I highlighted during the Draft Insiders podcast with Trey Wingo. He's smart. He's tough. He's more athletic than people give him credit for. He was used basically to play, to keep the action in front of him, to play downhill at Cincinnati. I think he's got the range to go sideline to sideline, fills a need. I think he's someone who could be a third safety, special teams player. Later on in the draft, they got 2 pass rushers and William Bradley King and 𝗙𝗢𝗡𝗡. William Bradley King started at Arkansas State, moved to Baylor. He's a guy who shows flashes, doesn't have great upside, but gets the most from his ability, which is kind of the opposite of 𝗙𝗢𝗡𝗡. 𝗙𝗢𝗡𝗡 is an athletic guy who's got great upside, and he makes plays in spurts. There'll be a game or two where he basically looks like a human highlight film, and then he disappears for 3 or 4 games. So it depends on which 𝗙𝗢𝗡𝗡 you're getting. Dax Milne, who was one of Zach Wilson's favorite targets, more of your possession, sure-handed type of guy. I think he's more of a practice squad type player.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought up Derek Force because he was somebody who all the talk was about James Wiggins in that backfield, and I really liked Force's game when I went to watch James Wiggins, and then they went and only had one UDFA signing from what I can find, and that is that Buffalo running back Jarrett Patterson.
There was talk about Patterson being a 3rd or 4th round pick. I said all along Patterson's a late round guy. I mean, he's short. He's not that big. He's slow. I had heard times of 4.7s during his pro day, but he gets the most from his ability, which is, what you want. So, I mean, if he makes the roster, he's going to make it as a 4th running back who's used in situational or in certain situations. He's going to have to make it on special teams. I think what happened with Patterson is your prototypical draft prospect where people looked at the highlights rather than actually looking at the film. They looked at the stats rather than actually watching the plays develop. And that's how they came with their opinion that he was a 3rd round choice, where he never had the physical skills to be that type of player.
Well, Tony, thank you for stopping by. Thank you for waxing poetically about my favorite division, the NFC East. And we will be back again with the NFC West in the next edition of the 2021 NFL Draft Recaps with our draft insider, Tony Pauline.